Lecture 30, we call it Contemporary Cultural Change. Recent cultural changes, let's talk about a few of them here. Traditional belief systems, Hinduism, Confucianism, and so on. Democracy ascendant, but there's still no consensus really on which political system is best, even though democratic-style republics have spread and spread. Rapid change slowed a bit by people's adherence to the old belief systems. So you got this rapid modernity on the one hand, and you got sort of a retrenchment on the other as people continue to retain their faiths in the old ways, whether it's religion or tradition and what have you. Urban world is more cosmopolitan. People of various backgrounds now mixed together. Synthesis here. We don't know the outcome of this. We mentioned briefly in our discussion on democracies that it may be less likely for people to go to war if they have the same values, same interests, et cetera, et cetera. So we are in an increasingly urbanized world mixed with population groups from all over, different languages, different backgrounds, et cetera, et cetera. Is this going to produce toleration? That's probably the big question. Some agents of cultural change. Nationalism. Of course, nationalism embraces a particular people's tradition, so it can combine with older belief systems. African nationalism, for instance, combined with Islam and or Christianity to push polytheism to the side. Marxism, a religious-like faith in a scientific explanation of human history. Of course, the Marxists argue that religion is an instrument of class oppression. Marxists argue that, what was the old cliche attributed to Marx? Religion is the opiate of the people. The Marxists have a commitment to material forces, not spiritual ones. They create new rituals, new holidays, new martyrs to memorialize their movement. And then, of course, you have liberal humanitarianism, which seems to be becoming more and more dominant as we move into the 21st century. Here, if we can characterize it, we can say that consumerism creates identity and status for people. You can see that in your own lives. There's a very strong belief that science can explain the world around us, that man indeed can dominate his environment. This is something fairly new in history. Increasingly in the liberal Western world, at least, you see toleration for differences. There's an understanding, perhaps, that there's no one orthodoxy. There's no one way to think. So pluralism seems to be a characteristic of the liberal Western cultures. Syncretism and cultural choices, the mixing that is, blending. We just discussed three systems, nationalism, Marxism, liberalism. Great complexity when these ideas are mixed with people's traditional beliefs. People tend to take these outside ideologies and sort of pick and choose what is useful to them and then blend them with their traditional beliefs to make something quite new. Something unique is created. Marxists agreed with nationalists when it was in their interest to do so. Best example, Stalin. Stalin rapidly moved from being a Marxist leader in World War II to being a Russian leader as the Nazis invaded the Soviet Union. And it's much easier to appeal to the Russian people to fight for the Russian motherland than it is for some abstract Marxist ideology. So again, people pick and choose what they want, what's useful to them from these larger systems, nationalism, Marxism, liberalism. Some other examples here. Italian Marxists sent their wives and children to church. And of course, Marxism is openly hostile to religion. Japanese modernists have Buddhist rituals, again, combining the old and the new. Many Chinese, ostensibly communist, are committed to Confucian principles that have been with us for thousands of years. So we have a blend here of secular and clerical, secular of the material world, clerical of the spiritual world. A reliance upon traditional faiths combined with secular belief in the power of science to answer our questions and allow us to dominate the world around us. No clear-cut answers. Sub-Saharan Africa is a region of cultural change. African interest in Marxism has diminished as it has elsewhere. Interest in popular nationalism has risen in Africa as it has elsewhere. Of course, traditionally, it's a great missionary activity of Muslims and Christians in Africa. These belief systems will be refashioned through African practices. Again, syncretism. In Latin America, there's an increasing interest in Protestant fundamentalism. It seems odd when you think about Catholic Latin America. The revival of Buddhism in China, a revival of Protestant missionary activity with the fall of Marxist states and the end of the Cold War. So again, these things remain in flux. It's difficult to predict the outcomes. Let's talk about, just for a moment, religious fundamentalism. The emergence of the Islamic State, or ISIS, clearly reveals a reversion to traditions that have been threatened by Western modernity, Western secularism. The U.S. remains the most religious of all Western countries. Hinduism remains strong in India. Are there core beliefs that people are searching for? Is modernity rejected in this search for a pristine past, a more perfect past? The internet spreads the word of traditional beliefs, a use of modernity to defeat modernity. Religious fundamentalists have less interest in toleration. To tolerate sin is in itself sinful. So we're left with the choice to convert you or to kill you. Fundamentalists seek state support for their religious goals. This is clear in the Middle East. It's also occurred in other countries. It's occurred in the United States. Of course, the evangelical right emerged in the late 70s and early 80s. Became a fairly powerful political force in conservative circles, seeking state support to suppress abortion rights, women's rights, prayer in school, display of 10 Commandments on government property, creating, if nothing else, controversy and lots of lawsuits. Is this just the reaction of people to the bewildering complexity of modern life? Is the modern state unable to provide spiritual satisfaction? This is usually carried out through nationalistic displays, parades, celebrations, honors, military heroes, through film. We just celebrated the 4th of July a couple of weeks ago. And there's an endless stream of biographies about the Founding Fathers. These all are elements of nationalism. Future cultural trends. Certain areas remain committed to secular society and science and consumerism. And here, of course, we're talking about the core, Western Europe, Mediterranean, at least parts of the Mediterranean, the United States, Japan, South Korea. Certain areas have not reached a consensus on these questions. Russia, Latin America, Sub-Saharan Africa. We don't know the future. We don't know how long this story is going to play out. Will the present-day religious revivals persist, or are they a last gasp of traditional belief systems? Clearly, Islam is awakened. What are the consequences of this? Can Islam live in peace with the modern world? That strikes me as a key question. Will toleration for differences increase or revert back to condemnation and oppression? Will Marxism be revived? Is that possible? After seeing its slow death here in the latter part of the 20th century, is it possible that it could be resuscitated? Will a new source of authority emerge to condemn consumerism? We don't know the answers to these questions. World history forces us to to examine these big issues, look for patterns, look for connections, trends, but we don't know the final answer. Thank you.